Well, I'm here with Michael Glover Smith, a filmmaker in Chicago, as well as a teacher and a writer. Thank you so much for being here, Michael.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jake.
Yeah, awesome. So we just want to dive in, kind of film by film. I'd be curious to get a little bit of background first, like leading into your first movie, Cool Apocalypse, of just kind of a brief how you got into film, how this ended up being your first film, what led you to.
Well, it's kind of an epic
Yeah.
story leading to Cool Apocalypse because I was 39 years old when I made it.
Mhm.
So I don't want to, I don't want to bore you too much. But I graduated from film school in 2004 from grad school in Humboldt State University. And at that point, I was 28 years old, and everything I had ever shot in school was on film. So I, came back to Chicago, kind of hoping to make independent films, and realized pretty soon that 16 millimeter was kind of obsolete as a production format. So I ended up just kind of putting my filmmaking ambitions on hold and just working, full time. And then I ended up teaching film history, at the college level because I had a master's degree. So it was a few years later, after sort of talking to my students about filmmaking, that I kind of got excited about trying to do it again. And so that's when I sort of educated myself about how to work digitally, and found some collaborators and made a couple of shorts, and then Cool Apocalypse. I shot it in the summer of 2014, which was the summer I turned 39, and I think, and this was a very low budget film, as you know. I think the budget was about $6,000.
Wow.
And it was almost like I was so naive when I made it. I didn't even know how much money I needed. It was like I kind of wanted to see how much money I could raise, and then whatever that number was, that was going to be the budget of the film. So I think we had kind of an open-ended GoFundMe campaign or something, or it might have been $10,000. I don't know, but $6,000 was what we raised, and so that's what we spent.
Amazing. And what did the shorts teach you for getting into the films? Like, what did you learn from those experiences that you carried over?
Well, I was really working with digital cameras for the first time, so that was new to me, and kind of figuring out how to communicate with a cinematographer, was interesting, because I came from a world of every time you pull the trigger on the camera, you're spending money because film is running through the camera.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the fundamentals still apply. It's all about capturing light, right? But I think I kind of grew to embrace the more lightweight, sort of freewheeling style of working, while also I think I ended up influencing my cinematographers to be a little bit more shrewd about, only shooting what we need. Because I always, I'm a big proponent of the detailed shot list, and as I think you are as well. And a lot of directors are not in the digital age. So, I learned a little bit from my cinematographers, and I think, they learned a little bit from me.
Yeah, there's definitely efficiency. I think that comes from starting there, of the overwhelmingness of digital, the possibilities there of you can't shoot anything, so why not shoot?
And I think a lot of people, they just let the camera run all the time. It's like, let's shoot everything.
Yeah.
And then that just invites chaos, especially when it comes to editing. It's like you're just gonna be in a world of pain if you have endless footage to look at.
And so the shorts you made, were they like ideas that you were potentially developing into features? So they come from feature scripts you had written?
They all were,
Okay.
Because I'm not really a shorts-oriented person. Like, my stuff is character-driven.
Yeah.
And I like to spend a long time with characters. Like, I like to slowly sort of dole out information, you know, drip by drip over a long run time, and those are the kind of movies I like to watch. So, so yeah, I mean, I think both of the shorts I made one in 2009 called At Last Okima, and then one in 2011 called The Catastrophe, and they were both feature-length scripts where I basically wrote the whole script, and then I'm like, okay, here's a good 15-page chunk that I can shoot, you know. So they're both kind of unsatisfying in the sense that I think you can kind of tell that they're like proof of concept shorts for longer projects.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually able to find At Long Last Okima on YouTube.
Yeah.
That's the short I could find, and
yeah,
it is interesting. It's the experimentation.
It's like see the beginning of a
feature.
Yeah. So it's like it just stops where the feature really should begin. But you know, when I was done with it, I kind of realized, I don't want to make this as a feature. So it was good that I sort of got those out of my system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so what made A Cool Apocalypse? Like, what was it about this idea that you were like, this is the one that I'm going to commit the time and resources to?
Well, to be honest with you, the concept was a lot simpler. You know, I mean, At Last Okima is like it's a musical, and it's a pseudo documentary, and it's a road movie. So that already is like, you know, 3 genres mashed together. And then the Catastrophe was also a road movie, and you know, it was also kind of genre oriented and was kind of complicated, and so I wrote other scripts too during that time period. I would write these like long, you know, feature length scripts, and I just realized none of these are quite right to make a no budget feature, because that's the only kind of movie I can make. I have no money, and then I can't remember exactly how I sort of stumbled on the concept, but I just thought, I think I was thinking of like, what kind of feature could I shoot in my own apartment? And so it was really born from that. Like, what could I do with just a few people and primarily one location? And then I kind of hit upon this idea of examining 2 relationships where you have a couple going out on their first date, and then another couple who are kind of breaking up for the final time after having been in an on-again, off-again relationship. And then I thought, okay, some of these people can know each other, and one person can be the newcomer to the group. And then the idea that really excited me once I came up with that concept was really the idea of parallel editing, and to cut back and forth between the 2 couples in almost a musical way. And then, because you have basically 2 parallel lines of action, and then the climax is where those 2 lines of action converge, because that's the one moment where all 4 characters come together and have dinner. And so once I knew that was going to be the structure, then I just tried to have fun writing it, and tried to come up with dialogue that I thought was interesting or funny or whatever.
Yeah, I've noticed with this one, it's the start, something you continue in your next couple films at least, of a structure of kind of very clearly defined chapters or perspectives. Like in this one, at least there's like the titles of introducing the characters. Like it's introducing the...
Using the chapter titles was not in the script, actually. And with Cool Apocalypse, I may have... I think shot a little more than I would later on, and also kind of, cut things out and reordered things, especially with the beginning of the film, because there was originally a whole scene with another character who was the landlord of the 2 male characters who are roommates, and this woman basically showed up to collect the rent, and only one of them had a check for her. And it was like a very, I thought it was kind of funny, but it was kind of an exposition-heavy scene where it kind of established who the characters were and what their relationships were. And then I just didn't think it worked in the film. And I was talking to my producer, and I was saying, I just want to cut it down as much as possible. And I kept cutting it shorter and shorter. And then eventually I just thought, let's just cut the whole thing. And I told her I wanted to do that. She said, no, you can't do that because that's how the audience knows who they are. And then I thought, well, it really doesn't matter because like they won't know in the beginning, but then they'll figure it out, you know, retroactively. And that was kind of a lesson for me to learn as a writer. You know, it's like I think editing a film helps you as a writer because then you start to realize what's necessary and what's not, and you realize that a lot of what you thought was necessary is not, because it's okay for the audience to be, you know, momentarily confused. If the audience feels like they're in good hands, then they will. It's okay for them to and actually not only is it okay, it's almost exciting if the audience is trying to figure out who these people are and how they are related. I've heard it said that, you know, even when you're watching a bad movie, the part where you're most engaged is usually the beginning because you don't know where it's going. And oftentimes when you get bored watching a movie, it's after you've kind of figured it all out and you know where it's going, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So to make a long story short, adding those chapter titles in Cool Apocalypse with each of the 4 character names was a way for me to try and bring a little bit of clarity after I felt like I had, you know, removed all of the exposition. I still wanted to make things to kind of make it clear to the audience that, you know, this was a film about these 4 people, and you know they each kind of have their own introduction. And I think in a way, you know, they're Nina's character Julie and Kevin Webby's character Paul are separate when you see them for the first time, and then the other couple, Claudio and Tessa, are together. And so I thought, maybe, you know, maybe that'll kind of make the overarching structure clear in a way to the audience, even if it's on a subconscious level. Like they'll kind of understand that it's about a couple that's together and 2 people who are destined to meet over the next, you know, 72 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that reminds me, I think it's a Brian De Palma quote where he talks about he's confused as to why so many films start off with like aerial views of the skyline, and I think he was saying the beginning of the movie is the one chance you have to do anything to get the audience involved.
Right, exactly.
Which
I also should point out, I think the inspiration for having the character names at the beginning was Mean Streets. You know, Scorsese does that. And that, you know, I thought about that before I tried it because I'm like, oh, it works really well there.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I guess going off that, other films kind of approaching like the structure, writing, whether it was dialogue or characters, did you have films in mind, like a certain structure you were interested in that you were going after with this film, or what was?
Well, yeah, I mean, it takes place in one day, so, you know, Richard Linklater is the king of that, and I actually had my actors watch Before Sunset, before I think we did a table read with all 4 of them together after they had auditioned, and we had them all watch that together, and I think we ate pizza, and then we did the table read. And so I think that was kind of helpful because I didn't know who they were. You know, it was like a traditional audition process, and these are people all in their 20s, and I knew that they had some acting experience, but you never know if people know what independent film is and what kind of movie you're making. And I think sometimes when actors mostly do theater, they watch only like big budget Hollywood films. And so I thought it wasn't like I wanted them to imitate, you know, Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke, but I thought, you know, it would just be a good way to show them the ballpark of what, you know, I was hoping to do.
Yeah, that's great.
And I think that was helpful to them too. Yeah.
And it gives you a similar cinematic language, or
a similar cinematic language, and a similar like, you know, character-driven kind of, you know, slightly heightened realism, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So how did you approach the casting process? Was this something we're starting off on this film, you're like, I'm definitely going to need to do these handful, several dozens of jobs, or as you went, it was like, oh, I need to be casting director and all these other
Well,
things?
I should point out my producer, Claire, who I just referenced a little while ago, Claire Kaczynski, she worked for Actors Equity.
Mm-hmm.
And so she worked in the office there and was very familiar with, the world of professional theater. And she was also a big theater fan. I'm sure she still is. And so she was very instrumental. She basically was a de facto casting director, and I didn't even really know where to find actors, especially since this was a non-union shoot.
Mm-hmm.
If it hadn't been for her, I might have just gone on Craigslist or something. But
Yeah.
she kind of knew that Actors Access and Backstage were sort of the best places to go.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it was a non-union shoot, we did offer a small stipend for all of the actors,
Okay.
which I think helped to
Yeah.
kind of, it helped with the caliber of person who was willing to show up
Yeah.
and read.
Mm-hmm. And so were you in the room reading or listening to, watching the auditions?
Yeah, I think they all submitted tapes first, if I'm not mistaken. Although now that I think back on it, I think it may have been a combination of tapes and, because in my mind, I know for a fact Kevin Webby submitted a tape when he auditioned for Paul. But I don't know with the others. I can remember Nina's audition, and I remember being mesmerized by it because it was so memorable.
Mm-hmm.
I remember she did that in person, and I think that was the first time I ever saw her. I remember it was in a theater space, in a performance space, and she sat down in a chair and took a moment and breathed, slowly,
Mm-hmm.
and then launched into this monologue, and it was like electrifying
Mm-hmm.
to watch. And I'm really proud of casting her because that was a week before Stephen Cohn cast her in Henry Gamble's Birthday Party,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
which she's great in. And
Yeah.
so that summer she was actually shooting both of our. I think she the shooting schedule of Cool Apocalypse was long because we started in June and we finished in August because we were basically shooting on weekends, and I think he shot his film kind of in the middle of that, and so she of course was getting paid a little more for that, so we kind of had to accommodate her and allow work with her schedule, and that was kind of a headache, was like how do we get all these people to agree to these days, which were basically Saturday and Sunday, and then the occasional Friday.
Yeah.
But again, Claire was very good. She was the one who really created the schedule and made sure she could get all of those people for the dates that we needed them.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you come in contact with Claire and have her come on as a producer?
So she's my sister-in-law.
Oh, yeah, makes it easy.
So,
Yeah.
but it's funny because she was she was a recent Columbia grad, and she had graduated from Columbia Film School with a concentration in producing.
Mm.
And strangely, I found that out right when I met her because she was dating my wife's brother.
Mm.
And so I met her, I think, at a family gathering or something, and it was the kind of thing where it's, as soon as I found out she was a producer, I kind of said, "Oh well, I'm a director. I need a producer."
Yeah.
And so I said, "I have a script. I'll send it to you." And the next thing you know, we're working together.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I found producers can be some of the tougher people to bring on. It's like a very specific skill set, especially at this level of like 10 grand under.
Yeah, and I think producing is one of those weird jobs where it's hard to define what a producer does,
Mm-hmm.
and a producer can do can be a producer in a lot of different ways, depending on what your budget is. And,
Yeah.
you know, some producers are good at being there in the beginning and helping you raise money, and then other ones are better at kind of the nuts and bolts of filmmaking and overseeing the production. And, and then some people are better when it comes to post. You know? So I don't know. It's like usually I'm working with multiple people who are doing these things, and sometimes we don't even figure out what they're if they're a producer until we're done.
Yeah.
I mean, that happened with Relative, not to like jump too far ahead, but Claire Cooney, who plays a prominent role in that film and is a casting director, I kind of like, you know, she had been so helpful throughout the whole process. You know, it was my idea. I said, you know, you were there from the beginning. You read the first draft. You gave me feedback. You know, you were the casting director, and now you're helping me edit. I'm like, do you want to be credited as a producer? I think that would be fair. And she was, I think, more than happy to receive that. Yeah. But it wasn't planned that way.
Yeah, you just find that by the end. Certain people, So what did the schedule for Cool Apocalypse look like? Was that planning like ahead of shooting anything, like these weekends are the weekends we shoot, or like week by week you have to see who's available?
I think, well, we had the whole schedule nailed down after we cast. So, you know, like I said, Nina kind of told us what her, you know, it was after we cast the film, everybody worked, you know, these were people who had jobs, and so they all kind of said, well, I'm not available this time, and so the schedule was created after the film was cast, and I think, you know, we always knew we were going to do it that summer, on weekends mostly, but we didn't finalize it until it was cast, which I don't remember when that was. Probably, you know, April or something of that year, April or May.
What was your crew makeup look like for this one? Like on set, how many people? What were the essential?
Oh, it was very, very small. I love that you're asking me about this because it's fun for me to try and remember what happened 9 years ago. But so we had a DP named Vince, who was a former student of mine at Oakton College, and then we had, in addition to him, one gaffer, Alex, who was a student at Columbia at the time, and then he ended up shooting. He's now a very accomplished DP, and he actually shot my third feature, Rendezvous in Chicago, Alex Halstead. So it was really the two of them who kind of, you know, did it all.
Wow. And
then in addition to them, we had kind of an all-purpose art person who was sort of responsible for the props, the whatever art direction we had, and also she was kind of a continuity person because, you know, we had this party scene where people were eating soup and drinking, and we shot that over a span of days. You know, it wasn't like, you know, the funny thing is, I think there were more shooting days on that film than anything I've done since, which is crazy. Yeah. Because my budgets have gone up. Yeah. You know? But I think there were 14 separate shooting days. Wow. So the big party scene in that film, which is the climax, I think we spent 4 separate days shooting that, and it was on weekends. It was like Saturday and Sunday. We shot during the day. We would even though those scenes took place at night, we blacked out the windows and would shoot during the day. Wow. And then, so continuity was very important because it's like, you know, how full are the glasses? How full are the bowls? Yeah. You know, we have to keep making that food over and over again. And so the art person was also kind of scripty as well. Okay. And then we had a costume person, costume and hair, and her name was Delina. So, and she ended up working on my next film, Mercury in Retrograde. So, sort of a two-woman art department, which took care of art, hair, makeup, costume, and then a two-guy camera crew.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think we had a couple PAs kind of cycling in and out who helped with various things. And then we had, basically a one-person sound crew, Colin Lenahan, who I've worked with many times since then.
Yeah, that's crazy how small it is. It's
when you're
what you need to do.
You don't need a big crew.
Yes.
And it's really, this is a debate I've had with every DP.
Mm-hmm.
DPs want a lot.
Yeah.
They want a lot of people working under them,
Mm-hmm.
and they want a lot of equipment.
Yes, yeah.
And so I understand, it's like, of course, they want their stuff to look professional, and they want to be able to use that footage on their reel. So they
Mm-hmm.
want to be able to, they want it to be really technically, competent.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also taught that way in film school.
Mm-hmm.
Any DP that comes out of film school is sort of taught that there's a correct way to do things, and nobody's ever taught the no budget way. They're
Yes.
taught the Hollywood way,
Yeah.
because that's the schools have to teach that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I think all film schools would be better off if they sort of were like, okay, kids, when you get out of here, you're going to be working with nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And here's how to do that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like I end up training my DPs a lot,
Mm-hmm.
how to work with me. And, we usually meet in the middle, because they usually, it's kind of like, I'm usually like, you can have an AC and a gaffer, and then they're like, well, I really also want a grip and
Mm-hmm.
a swing, and I'll be like, okay, you can have the grip.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So, it's like, I don't give them everything, but, they probably don't have, but I'd probably give them more than I would have
Yeah.
if it was just up to me. So
Yeah.
it's always a conversation.
Yeah. Got to keep them happy keep them engaged. I'm totally on the same page. The crew for the film I shot was about 5 people, including me. And
Yeah.
I remember being in film school just like even not too long ago, and just trying to talk to people of like, oh, we can get together this weekend and shoot something. We have a camera, sound, and actors.
Yeah.
And they're like, but what about lights or
You don't
crew?
need all
Yeah,
that
it's like, oh, we'll go outside.
shoot outside, shoot
Yeah.
next to a window.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of ways around it. Where it's interesting. It's not really taught.
Well,
It's
what's funny is you were asking about influences earlier. I talked about Linklater. When this film came out, the other filmmaker I always mention in interviews was Romer, who's a total hero of mine. And, I really love the stuff he did in the 80s and 90s. The comedies and Proverbs and Tales of the Four Seasons, when he started really paring his crews down to like virtually nothing.
Yeah.
But it's funny because he could do that because he was famous,
Yeah.
and it was like he started working with people who had no experience, and I kind of, it's like I wish I was successful enough to where I could work with a crew of 3.
Yeah.
And Godard, of course, did that as well towards the end. He was working with crews of 3. Pedro Costa works with like 3 people.
Yeah. Hong Sang Soo. Yeah.
And those people, they have the time to do it, and they have the, they're well known enough to the point where if they hire a DP, the DP's not going to think they're insane.
Yeah.
Whereas when I say, you only need a gaffer who can also be your AC, they think I'm either cheap or just like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. If you can't name all the lights, it's
But have you seen The Green Ray?
Yes.
I mean, he made that. His crew consisted of 2 people aside from him.
Yeah.
There was the cinematographer and the sound person. He may have had another person who was like an all-purpose assistant.
Yeah.
But that was it. It's like that was it, and they were shooting on film. And that should be harder.
Yeah.
With digital, it should be easy to do that.
Yeah.
But no, nobody wants to do it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think we've talked about in the past too, like someone like Hong Sang-soo, whose films look very digital.
Yeah,
There's no mistaking that
yeah,
it was shot with a very small crew, but after watching for a few minutes, it starts to, you don't even start to notice it. Like maybe the first time you watch one of them, it's like, oh wow, this is,
yeah.
looks like something you could take your camera outside and shoot.
Well, his career trajectory is following Ramirez pretty closely
Yeah.
because now he's doing it all himself.
Yes, yeah. Every movie is another position
Yeah.
he takes over.
Yeah, it's like he's his girlfriend. He's
Mhm.
also frequently his lead actress. She's now like the production manager.
Yeah.
Even when she's not in front of the camera, it's like
Mhm.
he's shooting it. He has a sound person, and then it's her.
Yeah.
And I honestly think these are his best films.
Mhm.
You know, like In Front of Your Face, I thought was such an exciting film.
Yeah.
Because it looked so ugly.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and I'm like, oh, he's got the confidence to.
Mhm.
He's got the confidence to do it himself, you know. And the music too. He does the
Yeah,
score.
the score,
It's like,
yeah.
it's like he's just like strumming
Yeah.
chords on an acoustic guitar, and it's perfect. You
Mhm.
know, it's perfect for what he's doing.
Yeah, yeah, I think it goes to a thing about micro-budget filmmaking mentality you have to have of, especially coming out of film school, there's a lot of talking, especially in writing, about how to get a wide audience engaged and
Yeah.
the beats you need to hit to like get your film in theaters or something, what you need to have in a movie. But at this level, when it's your own money or money you've raised on your own, you really do kind of have the freedom
Yeah.
to make something that's entirely yours and find your voice along the way, which I feel like isn't taken advantage of as much as it could
Absolutely.
be.
But I also feel like it's kind of a political decision as well. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, I think if the cinema is going to survive, you know, we have to, these kind of micro budget films really need to be able to thrive
Mhm.
in a theatrical setting.
Yeah.
You know, because it doesn't cost a whole lot of money to make something that looks good.
Mhm.
It's easier now to make something that looks good for very little money because of digital.
Yeah.
And yet, why are the budgets just going
Yeah.
up and up and up and up?
Mhm.
You know, it's like, why does Netflix demand, why do all these cable channels and all the streamers demand everything be delivered in 4K?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
You know, it shouldn't matter. And like, it's so easy to project, an image in HD. So like, why aren't we, going to the micro cinema and seeing these low budget films projected? You
Mhm.
know, I mean, there are a few venues here in town that I think sort of cater to that. I mean, I think Chicago Filmmakers,
Mhm.
sort of does a good job. But it should be more common than it is, in my opinion. And so I don't know, as somebody who's made 4 micro budget features, I mean, I'm getting ready to do another one, and it's funny because I'm kind of downshifting again, and I'm going to make a small weird movie,
Mhm.
and I'm in a way I'm sort of throwing down the gauntlet and saying, like, I don't care about getting into Sundance. Like, this is never gonna be streamed on Netflix. But I'm banking on the fact that there will be an audience for it. You know.
Yeah. Which, yeah, this positive of the internet accessibility era. It's,
Yeah.
trade-off of, there's more out there, so harder
There's
to
more
find.
out there, but it's I don't even care about streaming because
Mhm.
my last film, Relative's not available yet.
Mhm.
And we had a really long theatrical run with that film, and I feel like I have enough of a reputation now, and I have enough contacts with festivals and with commercial indie theaters where I can do this again and make a small weird movie and attract investors and with the idea that we're gonna keep it in theaters for as long as possible. We're gonna do like theaters and festivals simultaneously,
Yeah.
and keep it in theaters for over a year. And not a lot of filmmakers are trying to do that. It's like, I think most indie filmmakers, they make a low budget to no budget film, and then they just kind of hope for a good festival premiere, and they hope
Mm-hmm.
to sell it to a distributor, and usually it ends up online a lot sooner than that.
Yeah.
A lot sooner than what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's because a distributor, wants to put it online, or whether they end up doing it themselves because they're just like, oh, well, I just want people to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's. So I do think I have a little bit of a political stance.
Yeah.
I'm basically treating my own movies the way that the way that I want to experience other people's movies.
Yeah.
And sometimes do, but oftentimes don't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I watch a lot of micro budget films, but oftentimes it's because I catch something at a festival or I see it online and I think, oh man, it's too bad I couldn't go see that on the big screen.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so this next film you're talking about, I assume it's has more of a budget than Cool Apocalypse.
Yes,
but yeah,
it does.
Yeah, okay.
Because it will be a SAG film.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the process of trying to figure out, how much money we can spend while getting making a really quality film without overspending.
Mm-hmm.
How many days do we need? And I really think we're going to try and do this for 8 days. We're going to try and do it for $35,000, which is very low.
Mm-hmm.
And originally I thought 7 days and $30,000, and my producer says, I think you're being a little optimistic. Give yourself one more day and another 5,000. And of course he's right. So it's funny. The more I do it, the more confident I am in understanding how it can be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess, zooming back in on Cool Apocalypse, budget-wise, heading into the production, was it something, whether it was like $10,000 that you set for the GoFundMe and however much you raised, were you basing that off anything, like any?
It was based
films?
on nothing. I was so naive.
Yeah.
I had no clue. It was kind of like, I don't think we had a traditional budget like in a spreadsheet or anything like that, but I think we kind of figured, I probably just wrote it all down on a sheet of paper, like, oh, we can afford to pay up, each person $200, and we'll pay gas money for our DP who has to come in, and we were loaned some equipment by a cinematographer, which was very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then, we did pay for a location. We did pay a location fee for the bookshop.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one location we paid. I think they gave it up to us for, they let us shoot there for 4 hours, and we paid them a couple $100. So, just a couple $100 here or there. And then food, of course, is always, that's the one place where you need to definitely spend the money to keep everyone happy.
Yeah. And how did you prepare your cast and crew for this experience of, it might not be what you pictured making a movie is like, with trailers and all the...
Well, it was new for all of them. So it was new for everybody, I mean, my DP had never shot a feature. This was my first feature. It was the first feature for all of the cast. And I think, we just, it was kind of had a summer camp vibe. I was just trying to make sure everybody had fun, and I was trying to be kind of, honest about the fact that I didn't know everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I did have a shot list, and, we did rehearse in advance,
mm-hmm.
and that was very helpful.
Okay.
I would get each of the couples together, and we would spend a night, rehearsing after the table read,
mm-hmm.
And so that was helpful. And then we just tried to have fun and create something we could all be proud of. Yeah.
And what did the production days tend to look like?
I don't remember how. Nothing. Everything was definitely less than 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really remember if we had any super long days. Probably, I would guess not. I don't think we even had anything that was 10 hours. It was more like 8-hour days. And so we we budgeted more time than we needed, which was
Mhm.
probably smart. And I think there was maybe 1 or 2 days which were half days. I know we went to my dentist's office to shoot the scenes in the women's health clinic
Mhm.
because he allowed us. We needed like a, like a waiting room area that looked like it could belong to a medical clinic, and my dentist let me shoot there for free. So we just went in, and that was like a half day.
Yeah.
And I think that we did one day on the beach, which was like all the stuff at the beginning. That was a half day.
Okay.
So it was 14 days, but it wasn't like crazy long days.
Yeah, it varies a little bit. Yeah, I mean, 12 to 14 hours is long for anyone.
Well, that's what I do now.
Yeah.
Now it's like every day is 12 hours.
Yeah, and now that people are getting paid,
Yeah, now that you're getting paid,
Yeah.
you're going to be here all day.
Yeah. And then, is there anything you can look back to this movie on as being like the biggest or like a really important lesson, whether in like production, directing, screenwriting, something that you learned that you carried on? I'm sure there was hundreds. Yeah.
I mean, I was so naive when I made it that I think the biggest lesson that I learned is that, when you make a no-budget movie, nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know that at the time, and in a way, I was lucky that I didn't know that, because I would have never done it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like you don't realize how everything is stacked against you.
Yeah.
It's like you just love the medium, and you've made shorts, and you've been to school, and you watch something, even if it's like a French New Wave film, you think, oh, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing about Godard's Breathless, which is really, I think, one of his least good films, people love that movie because you watch it and you feel like you can do it.
Mm.
It's all handheld, it's all jump cut, it's all locations, all real location shooting, it's all natural light, and you're just kind of like, I don't need anything, I can do this.
Yeah.
And then you try it and you realize you can't do
Yeah.
But you also think that people are going to care. You're like, oh yeah, no, I'm going to get into festivals, and I'm going to get distribution, and even if I'm not successful beyond my life, even if I'm not, if I don't play South by Southwest or Tribeca or European festivals, I'm sure there are plenty of small festivals in America that will want to show my work, and then it's just mass rejection.
Yeah.
You realize, oh yeah, nobody cares, because all of these festivals are literally getting thousands of submissions. So I don't know, that naivete was helpful, because God knows I might not have even done it if I had known how hard it was.
Yeah.
So your ignorance is really a virtue in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like now too there seems to be a really strong myth about how your like debut needs to be everything, like it needs to really make an impact. Like people always point to like Citizen Kane, and they're like, he was 25 when he made that, and you're like, all right, that was a very specific period of time, very specific set of circumstances.
Right.
Your first movie's not going to be Citizen Kane, most likely. Maybe it'd be cool, but
the culture is still very youth oriented.
Yes,
People want to make a big first impression.
Yeah.
People want to be on those lists.
30
under 30 and all that. But whenever I hear people trot out the whole Orson Welles was 25 when he made Citizen Kane, my rebuttal to that is always, but Claire Denis was 42 when she made Chocolat.
Yeah.
So everybody develops at their own pace, and I was 39. It's funny though. I do think being 39 was kind of a motivator, because the older you get, the more cognizant you are of your mortality. And I was like, 40 is, and I've never been the kind of person who was like afraid of aging or afraid of death, but I do think there's something about the big 4-0 where I kind of thought, well, it would be nice to accomplish something by this age. So I do think for me, even though I didn't have the highest hopes in the world for Cool Apocalypse, I thought, I went to film school. I got a BA in film production. I got a master's in film production, and I really want to feel like that training was useful, and I want a shot at making a feature. And if I could do that by the time I'm 40, that would be pretty cool, even if nobody watches it. And so not only did I direct this film when I was 39, I also published a book when I was 39, which is called Flickering Empire, and that was published by Columbia University Press in January of 2015, and then I think this movie premiered maybe April or May of 2015.
Wow.
It's when I was still 39. So I felt really good at the time. I was like, oh yeah, I published a book and I premiered a movie at a festival, and I'm not yet 40.
Yeah. Everyone moves at their own pace. I think is super important. It doesn't always get emphasized as much as it should.
Exactly.
But yeah, because you see filmmakers grow. I always like to point at Who's That Knocking at My Door as an interesting debut, because it's definitely solid, but you see, obviously Scorsese goes on to so much more, but you see like moments in there where you go, that's like, I see kind of where he's going. Obviously the benefit of hindsight, but
I mean that's a great film to watch if you want to see a great director in, you want to see their themes and their stylistic tropes in kind of embryonic form. Because you're right, it's a little wonky, but at the same time it's still inspirational. I mean, the other film too that I think was an influence on Cool Apocalypse is Stranger Than Paradise. That movie was so important to me, even though I'm not the biggest Jarmusch fan. What I was saying earlier about Breathless being a movie that shows you could do it. Stranger Than Paradise is like that too, especially aesthetically, because it's so simple. The use of black and white is it's kind of beautiful, and when I wanted to shoot Cool Apocalypse in black and white, the biggest reason was because I had no money. It's not, obviously it's not cheaper, it's the same, it's all digital information, but I remember thinking, if people see this, that it's in black and white, they're going to know that an aesthetic choice was made. You know what I mean? So it's almost like black and white elevates your production value in a weird way, because people see black and white and they go, oh, this is art. And Stranger Than Paradise, it's such a simple film. It's like not only the use of black and white, but also there's not a lot of camera movement in it. I mean, there's some tracking shots outside, but it's like a lot of scenes are in people's homes, and he does the use of like fading in and fading out. And all these scenes where nothing happens, it's just like some absurd dialogue between two people, fade in, you see a guy try and teach a woman how to use a vacuum cleaner and then fade out. And I remember the first time I saw that thinking, oh, I get it. It's like, this is a movie really about nothing, but when you take all of these moments about nothing and string them all together, it adds up to something. It's not, nothing plus nothing can equal something. And it can be funny. And the audience knows that it was made for no money. And yet that's kind of baked into the charm. So that was an inspiration. I mean, I wasn't trying to make a movie like that. But the idea of like, it's okay to lean into the smallness of what you're doing. Because I think a mistake a lot of people make when they make their first features is they're too ambitious. It's like too many locations, too many actors, too much plot. Too much going on. Keep it simple and try and create something that people will believe in. That's and you by the way, you're good at doing this. I mean, I know you're interviewing me, but I've seen your first feature, and you and I are kind of kindred spirits in that way. You kept it simple as well, and that's what I like about your work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know Stranger Than Paradise, I know, was a huge influence on me as well. Just I think, like you're talking about too, embracing what they had and using
what you
that.
have.
Yeah.
Like, that should be shown in every film school first semester, first year. But of course it isn't.
No, yeah. It's like maybe if you get a cool teacher in like an independent 80s class, but and yeah, like moments sneak up on you too. I always think about when they go to look at the lake, and part of the black and white is just you just can't see anything beyond them, which kind of gets to you is also funny and certainly helps having John Lurie and Richard Edson. But yeah, that's really interesting. So going into how long did the post take you on this film? At what point did you realize you were wrapped up, like you were ready to start sharing it?
So post, it wasn't super long, but we didn't also have like a schedule. I mean, it was kind of an open-ended schedule. Like I said, we wrapped in August of 2014, and I believe we premiered the following May. So, and of course, we weren't in post that whole time. We were in post, and then we were trying to submit to festivals and getting rejected. So it was a few months. Oh, I know. We had a screening of the finished film in December of 2014. I believe it was after Christmas, but before New Year's. So we were done by the end of the year.
Okay.
And that was a really important night in my life when we screened it, because Milos Stehlik, the founder of Facets Multimedia, was there. And he saw it, and he was, he responded positively to it and tried to help us get festival acceptance. So that was, but the actual post, we had the editing wasn't hard, like, because there wasn't a lot of footage. We had a very good editor, Jason Becker, who I believe is in LA now, and I liked working with him. He was fun to work with, and he thought his job was easy. I remember him telling me, he's like, yeah, there's not a lot of decisions to make. I remember telling him, let everything play out. Let it all play out long. And, he is an editor by trade. Like, that is what he does. And since then, I've only worked with editors who were also directors, and it's a different experience. Because I feel like even though I told Jason to let everything play long, he still cut it shorter than I would have, because somebody who's trained to be an editor, they can't help but trim the fat. I remember there's a montage scene, where the characters are driving down Lakeshore Drive, and you hear the song, and the way he cut it in the rough cut is the way it is in the final film. And I remember saying, like, watching his rough cut and thinking it was really good, but it's like he only uses the first verse and the first chorus of the song Lakeshore Drive. And at that point, we had permission to use that song. Like, I paid $40 for the rights, which is insane. And I remember saying to him, watching it, and being like, this is great, but can we use the whole song? And he said, he goes, well, I've kind of used all the shots that you have. Like, there's, if we make it any longer, we're just going to be re-seeing the same thing. And it's funny because, he's right, because that's the way it should be. But, like, when we made Relative, there's also a dance scene, which is kind of a montage set to a song. And, the first cut, the song is over 4 minutes long, and the first version, Eric Marsh, my editor, he let the whole song play out, and everybody who saw it was like, oh, you gotta cut it down, it's too long. And of course we did. It ended up being exactly 2 minutes. So I remember it became a question of like, okay, let's cut this in half, but the way to do it is to edit the song. So I remember saying to Eric, edit the song so that the song is only 2 minutes long. And he did a really good job, because he cut 2 minutes out of the middle of the song. It's not like he faded it out. He kept, because the song has this long fade out at the. It's got this kind of like long outro, and then it fades out. And he kept that, and he cut a big chunk out of the middle. And honestly, that to me, it's like a knife in my heart trying to thinking of what to cut, because I loved all of it, of course. Like every director, it's like I got all this great footage of all these great actors dancing, and I could watch that forever. But once I told Eric 2 minutes no more, he did that. And then once he showed that to me after he had done it, it's like I wasn't there with him. Once he showed, it's like I saw the 4 minute plus version and then the 2 minute version, and then of course I'm like, oh yeah, that was not necessary.
Yeah, and it's, I think, one of those things you'll know what's missing more than the audience. They have no idea.
They have no clue. Yeah, it's like, as a director, you think it's all crucial, and that's why it's good to not edit your own films, to be honest. It's good to just give that footage over to somebody else. And somebody who can allow you to get used to the idea, bit by bit, that it's not all necessary.
So how did you find the editor for Cool Apocalypse?
So Jason. I believe he knew. I believe Claire brought him on board, if I'm not mistaken. I believe he was someone that she knew, but honestly, I can't remember.
Okay, and was it something you knew that you didn't want to, or you didn't have the experience in digital editing that you need an editor, or is it what you're just saying, where you knew that from the start of?
Oh, I knew it from the start. I mean, I did edit digitally in college. Like, we started off on a Moviola with a razor blade, shooting 16 millimeter, a reversal film stock. But then, by the time I graduated from Columbia in 2000, we were editing on Final Cut. By the time I graduated, even though we were shooting on 16, it was being transferred to digital, and then we were editing digitally. And then same thing when I went to grad school. It was a combination. It's like sometimes you were on the Steamback, and then other times you were doing it on Premiere. So I knew Premiere and Final Cut, but I don't like editing. That's my least favorite stage of the whole process. And it's always fascinating to talk to other directors, because it's pretty common for a lot of filmmakers to say that's their favorite stage. How do you feel about it?
I'm a little split. It's never been something I've considered myself very strong with. And it was just, I went to film school, and one of the first friends, my closest friend still, that I made is just an incredible editor. So this is one of those things where it's like, well, I'd rather bring more collaborators on, I think, like you're talking about. It's like getting a different view on it. And someone who speaks a similar language, has seen similar films, and kind of knows what I'm going for. Where I can hand off footage and be like, you can take a pass at it, like, you do it, I want to see what you do with your side of it, because you know way more about editing than I do.
And the other thing about editing is, you can always undo it. You can undo whatever your editor has done. So I think it's really important to have, like you said, someone who speaks the same language, but is going to do things that you would not do. Because often, and that's true of every collaborator. It's like, I like to be surprised. I like for my actors to come up with things that are better than what I had in mind. I like it when my editor makes choices that I would not have made, because oftentimes they're going to surprise you in a good way, and if they surprise you in a bad way, you can always just say no. But I like working with Eric Marsh, who cut both of my last two features, as well as this short that I have out now on the festival circuit. And it looks like if this new feature I want to shoot in January happens, he's going to cut that too. The thing I like about him is he and I are we share a frame of reference, and I feel like he knows what my style is, so it's like I don't have to tell him anything. He kind of knows how to cut it together, and I always like, he's a director, but he has a real affinity for editing, and he can really, he'll just toy around with things forever, just trying to take one frame out or add one frame and looking at the results over and over. I get very impatient with that. I'm like, it's good enough, let's move on. And he'll be like, no, I can get it better. And he'll cut another frame, and then I'll say, oh no, that's too much, gotta put that back in there. I'm sitting there bored out of my mind.
No, for sure. With with Jason, was that a case of you handing off all the footage and you said, you do the rough cut, come back. I know you said let things play. You got some notes.
It was a great experience. I handed off the footage. I said, "Give me a rough cut," and I think he showed me. I don't remember if I probably watched it on my own, the rough cut first, and then he and I got together and refined it. Of course,
yeah.
Because there are always going to be moments where I say, "Oh wait, I don't." There's another take that I think that I remember being better, or sometimes it's more about moving stuff around or whatever. But I think I only sat down with him, twice, like too long after his rough cut. I think he and I sat down together for 2 long afternoon sessions of a few hours, and then once the picture was locked, then we did color correction. My producer and I did that ourselves. We actually hired someone who I think was a little bit overly manipulative, and then we kind of had to undo his work. My producer and I kind of ended up finishing that ourselves, and then the music, that we had an original score written for that, and that was fun to work with these 2 composers. They did this very minimalist score of just like acoustic guitar and keyboard, and I really enjoyed that process of working with them on the music.
Yeah. And at what point did you know you wanted the Lakeshore Drive song? Was that in the writing?
That was in the script.
Yeah.
I mean, I made that, talk about naivete. I wrote that song into the script. I also wrote the song Nina sings, which is called My Walking Stick. That's an Irving Berlin song. And, I had no clue who owned the rights to those songs or what it would cost. You're just like, oh, this would be cool. You know this. You have Mac the Knife in your film. You just gotta hope for the best.
Yeah.
And, I really lucked out with Lakeshore Drive because the guy who owned the rights was a guy named Skip Haynes, who not only wrote the song, he also owned the master recording. So what he was doing, he has since passed away. He basically had a website where he would sell you a custom-made version of the song, which was the original master recording, but he would overdub someone's name into the song.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, like, if you wanted to buy, a birthday present for your friend, you could have him sing their name in the song because he would just overdub it. And so, basically, that's how I ended up getting the rights. I was like, I'm willing to pay you kind of what people are paying for this. Like, I can afford to pay you $40 for this. Can I have the rights for this forever? And he was like, sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's definitely something I fall into a lot of, like, trying to stop. I know music is a big part of your life too.
Well, I'm a huge fan of music, and of course that was a lesson that I learned. It's like, don't do that. Don't write don't write the songs into the script because you're probably not going to be able to afford it. And just doing the research into figuring out who owns the rights and trying to negotiate it is so difficult. So since then, I have licensed some songs for very little, and then oftentimes I'll get music for free. I have paid composers to write things, and then sometimes, I just have friends who are musicians who are willing to let me use music for free.
Yeah.
So it's the micro budget way.
Yeah, friends and similar-minded artists, but
so it's like every micro budget film has a bunch of pop songs in it that you've never heard because it's a musician friend of the film.
Yeah,
that's
can help each other out.
That's a very 2010s phenomenon. Like Stephen Cohn. You see that. I kind of learned that from him.
And then so with the festivals distribution, you talked a little bit about your experience with festivals, but what did this experience with this film teach you about getting your film out there and seen by audiences?
Well, I was lucky because I was definitely rejected by a lot of festivals, but I was somewhat realistic. Like, I was submitting to a lot of the small festivals. We premiered at the Illinois International Film Festival. Have you ever heard of it?
I don't think I have.
You haven't. It's been
Yeah.
around a long time.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and at that time, it was held in, where does Wayne's World take place?
Oh.
Aurora.
Aurora,
It was being
yeah,
held
yeah.
in Aurora,
Wow.
Illinois,
Mhm.
at a like in the field house of a public park.
Wow.
So they wanted, they accepted it.
Mhm.
But I should also point out, I didn't submit it to the big festivals. I submitted it to some sort of medium-sized festivals, and then Illinois International wanted it, and they also gave us their, best picture award or best narrative feature award.
Mhm.
So that made me feel good.
Yeah.
Even though it's a small festival that nobody's ever heard of,
Mhm.
there were other features in that festival. There was one about, Harold Washington.
Wow.
It was like a period piece set in the 80s.
Oh.
So the fact that we won over that
Yeah.
was kind of gratifying. I thought, wow, this is really cool. And then, we played a couple of other small festivals, and including a really great festival in North Carolina, which I know you're aware of, Full Bloom, which
Mhm.
I'm going back to next month with my new short. And that was kind of a lesson that I learned was, everybody, when they make their first feature, they want to get into festivals that are established, that have been around for a long time. 'Cause
Mhm.
in fact, that's one of the ways you can sort festivals on Film Freeway,
Yeah,
right? It's like more than 5 years.
Yeah.
Has the festival been around more than 10 years? Because you
Mhm.
figure, oh, it's going to be a good festival. But I always tell, aspiring filmmakers, look at festivals that are brand new. Because, you're a brand new filmmaker. And oftentimes, the people who are putting on these festivals, even if they've never done it before, they're serious.
Mhm.
Just like you're serious. And that's how you forge relationships. So Full Bloom in Statesville, was their first year. They took a chance on me by programming me. I took a chance on them by
Mhm.
submitting to them.
Yeah.
And I went down there, and they also gave me an award for Best Narrative Feature, which came with a cash prize. So that was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And the whole reason why I found out about them was I was looking for festivals in North Carolina because that's where I'm from.
Mhm.
And so I thought it would be fun to go down there and see family and
Yeah.
kill two birds with one stone. But also, I looked at the website for the festival, and it seemed like they were really doing it right. It's like they had the Chamber of Commerce involved, and
Mhm.
it's like they had a lot of support. It was obvious they had a lot of support from the community. So, it's like the longer a festival is around, the more submissions they're going to get.
Mhm.
And I just thought, oh, this is a festival, it's their first year. They're probably not going to get a ton of submissions, but it seems like it's going to be good.
Yeah.
And it was. And I feel like Full Bloom and I have sort of grown up together because now they're in their 9th year or whatever, and they'll be showing one of my films for the 4th time.
Wow.
So it's like I've seen that festival evolve, and that festival has seen me evolve
Yeah.
as a filmmaker. So that's that's pretty cool. And then I think we also got to do a small festival in South Carolina around then, and they also gave us an award. So we won awards at the first 3 festivals, and that was really surprising,
Mhm.
And then I thought maybe I should submit this to a theater. And that's when I submitted it to the Gene Siskel Film Center, which has always been my favorite
Yeah.
theater in Chicago because of the programming. And I have been going there since 1994, probably, maybe 93. And when they agreed to show it, that really blew my mind because I just wasn't aware of them having ever shown a feature film made, on that low of a budget.
Mhm.
But they liked it, and they were willing to give me 2 screenings, and that really opened a lot of doors for me because the film was reviewed by Ray Pride in Jew City magazine. He made that his critics pick for the week, one of his 5 critics picks for the week or whatever, back when New City was a weekly. And then as a result of that, a guy named Craig Keller, I don't know if you're aware of him, he's a very good critic and Blu-ray producer. He used to work for Masters of Cinema, the European Blu-ray label, and now he works for I think a couple labels in the US. But he asked to see it because he read Ray's review online, and I sent him a link, and he watched it and he reviewed it for his blog, which is called Cinema Asparagus. And I think he was living in New York at the time, and so he gave me this really nice review. He compared it to the work of I think Ignatiy Vishnevetsky or maybe early Swanberg, and then also the French New Wave, because he's very cinema literate. And so that made me feel like I kind of reached the right, I was reaching the right people. And that really gave me the confidence to do it again. More so than the festivals, it was like playing the Siskel and getting positive reviews. I thought, oh man, like, let's do this again, and let's do it with a much higher budget. Like, I can write a film that takes place somewhere else. And then, of course, that became Mercury in Retrograde.